Have you ever read a marketing message and immediately thought, they don't understand me at all? Maybe the message tried too hard to create urgency. Maybe it promised an easy solution to a complicated problem. Maybe it pushed a product before explaining how it could help. Or perhaps it sounded as though it had been written for a marketing formula rather than for a human being. Now, think about the opposite experience. You read an article, watch a video, open an email, or see a social media post and think, that's exactly what I have been struggling with. Suddenly, you pay attention. And why? Because you feel understood. And that brings us to an important principle for digital leadership. Before people are ready to hear what we want to say, they often need to know that we understand what they need. And that is where empathy and digital content meet. Welcome to Digital Marketing Secrets, folks. This is where we explore digital leadership and practical ethical ways to communicate, serve, and build relationships in an increasingly connected world. I'm Richard Fontanie, and this week across the e-learning journal, we are exploring compassion and empathy. Our leadership companion, Empathy in Action, Real-World Business Applications, introduced the idea connecting the entire week. Compassion notices, empathy understands, and leadership acts. The listening heart challenged us to see people with compassionate eyes. And coaching talks showed how empathy and accountability can strengthen workplace relationships. Now we enter the digital world because the people reading our emails, visiting our websites, watching our videos, and scrolling through our social media feeds are not clicks. They are not traffic. They are not conversion rates. They are people. And that may be one of the most important things digital marketers can remember. Behind every click is a person. Digital marketing gives us extraordinary amounts of information. We can measure impressions like clicks, views, watch time, open rates, conversion rates, engagement, traffic sources. Those measurements can be extremely useful. They help us understand what is working and where communication may need improvement. But here's the danger. The more we focus on numbers, the easier it becomes to forget what those numbers represent. 1,000 website visitors means 1,000 individual people arrived at our page. 100 email opens means 100 people gave us some portion of their attention. A comment represents a person who decided to join the conversation. A purchase represents someone trusting us enough to exchange money for something we offered. So metrics matter, but people matter more than metrics. Empathy-driven marketing remembers the person behind the number. Traditional marketing often begins with a question such as, how can we persuade people to buy? But empathy-driven marketing begins somewhere else. What is this person trying to accomplish? Now that shift may seem small, but it isn't. It changes how we create content. Instead of beginning with the product, we begin with the person. What problem are they trying to solve? What are they worried about? What confuses them? What have they already tried? What questions might they be afraid to ask? And what genuinely makes their work or life easier? Only then do we ask whether what we offer can help them. Sometimes it can, and sometimes it cannot. Trust grows when we are willing to recognize the difference. One of the most effective content strategies is also one of the simplest. Listen. Pay attention to the questions people repeatedly ask. Read comments. Notice replies to emails. Listen to customer conversions. Pay attention to language people use to describe their problems. Look at what creates confusion and notice what people hesitate about before making a decision. Now, these are not merely marketing opportunities. They are opportunities to understand. Suppose you offer an online course. You could create content saying, enroll now and transform your career. Or you could first listen to what the prospective learners are actually saying. Perhaps they're worried about that they do not have enough time. Perhaps they have purchased courses before and never completed them. Perhaps technology makes them nervous. And perhaps they are uncertain whether the material applies to someone at their stage of life or their career. Now, your content can respond to real concerns. Instead of, don't miss this opportunity, you might say, if you're interested in learning but worried about finding the time, here is how the course is structured for busy professionals. Now, that is a very different conversation. One pushes, the other understands. And here's another practical discipline. When creating digital content, imagine you are speaking to one person, not everyone in the marketplace, not a demographic, not an audience segment, but a real person. What would you say if that person were sitting across the table from you? You would probably not begin by shouting, limited time, act now. You would probably ask a question and you would listen, you would explain, you would answer concerns, you would try to be useful. And if your product or service was not appropriate, hopefully, you would not pressure the person into buying it. Digital communication should not abandon the values we would use face-to-face. Technology changes the channel. It should not change our character. People have become remarkably good at detecting communication that feels manufactured. They notice exaggerated promises. They recognize artificial urgency. And they become cautious when every piece of content seems designed to lead immediately to a purchase. Empathy offers another path. Teach before selling. Explain your persuading. Help before asking. Be honest about what your product can do. Be equally honest about what it cannot do. Use language people understand. Acknowledge legitimate concerns. And remember that trust is usually built through many small experiences. A useful article, a thoughtful reply, a helpful video, an honest recommendation, a clear explanation, a respectful follow-up. Now, none of these may produce an immediate sale, but together they build something far more valuable: credibility. Now, empathy-driven digital communication applies across all our e-learning framework. In business, it helps us understand customers before designing offers and messages. Instead of asking only, what can we sell? We ask, what can we solve? At work, empathy improves internal digital communication. Think about email. A short message written quickly can sound harsh, even when that was not the intention. A manager writes, "Need this today." The employee reads, "You failed again." Digital communication removes tone, facial expression, and many of the cues that help us interpret meaning. A few additional words can make a difference. I know you have several priorities today, but I need this completed before the end of the day. Let me know if something is preventing that. Same expectation, but a completely different human experience. And in life, our digital habits also matter. A comment, a text, a social media reply, a disagreement online. We sometimes say things through screens that we would never say to someone sitting across from us. Empathy asks us to remember there is a person on the other side of the screen. Before publishing your next piece of content, try asking 3 questions. Does this show that I understand the person? Is this genuinely useful? And would I communicate this way face to face? If the answer to all 3 is yes, you are probably moving toward empathy-driven communication. But if not, take a pause. The problem may not be your marketing technique. The problem may be that the message has moved too far away from the person it was supposed to serve. And that brings us to our coffee break. When we return, we will take this concept a little further. We will explore how to write empathy-driven messages, how to use emotional language without manipulation, how compassion can strengthen customer relationships, and how the FMelearning principle of value first can become a practical digital communication strategy. But for now, carry this thought into the break. Behind every click, view, comment, email, and sale is a human being asking, consciously or unconsciously, do you understand what matters to me? Welcome to the coffee break, a moment to step away from the screens, refill your coffee, and reflect on how today's conversation applies to your own digital communication. Before the break, I left you with a question that sits quietly behind almost every customer interaction. Do you understand what matters to me? Now, think about the last promotional email you sent, the last social media post you created, the last product description you wrote, and the last video you recorded. Did it begin primarily with what you wanted to say, or did it begin with what your audience needed to hear? Now, there's nothing wrong with promoting something valuable. Business needs customer. Entrepreneurs need sales. Organizations need people to respond. The question is not whether we promote. The question is how we do that. So while you enjoy your coffee or your beverage of choice, Consider this. Does my content make people feel understood or merely targeted? And that distinction takes us to part 2, from targeting people to serving people. Now, welcome back to Digital Marketing Secrets. Marketing language often talks about a target audience. The term is useful. We need to know who we are trying to reach. But language can quietly influence how we think. If people become merely targets, marketing can become something we do to them. Empathy-driven communication changes the relationship. Instead of asking only, how do I get this person to click? We ask, what would make this click worthwhile for them? Instead of, how do I overcome their objection? We ask, what legitimate concern might be behind their hesitation? Instead of, how do I create urgency? We ask, is there a genuine reason this person needs to act now? Now, this does not make marketing ineffective. It makes marketing more trustworthy, and trust has long-term value. Now, here's a practical framework you can use when creating an email, an article, a social post, a video, a landing page, or a product message. Think of 4 words: listen, understand, help, invite. First, listen. Begin with what your community is telling you. What questions keep appearing? What frustrations do people mention? What language do they use? What are they really trying to accomplish? Do not begin by inventing a problem your product can solve. Begin with the real problems people already have. Second, understand. So go beneath the obvious question. Suppose someone asks, is this course easy to use? The surface question is about usability, but underneath it may be, I'm not very confident with technology, or I've purchased programs before and couldn't figure them out. Understanding helps us respond to the actual concern. We might say, if technology sometimes feels intimidating, the lessons are designed to take you through the process step by step. Now, the message acknowledges the person and not merely the product feature. Thirdly, help. Before asking for anything, provide something useful. Answer the question. Teach a principle. Clarify confusion. Offer a practical suggestion. Help people make a better decision, even when that decision may not immediately benefit you. And that is value first in action. And fourth, invite. When appropriate, make the offer. An invitation sounds quite different from pressure. If you'd like to explore this further, here's the next step. Or if this fits what you're looking for, you can learn more here. Or if you're ready to continue, the program is available. The customer retains agency. You provide clarity, but they decide. So listen, understand, help, and invite. That is a simple approach, but it can change the tone of digital communication. Good marketing connects emotionally. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. People are emotional beings. Our hopes, concerns, ambitions, frustrations, and relationships influence our decisions. The ethical question is how we use that knowledge. Now, there is a difference between recognizing emotion and exploiting emotion. Suppose someone is worried about career security. Empathetic content might say, career uncertainty can make it difficult to know what skill to develop next. Now, here are 3 questions that may help you decide. Manipulative content might deliberately intensify fear. Your career could disappear unless you act immediately. One acknowledges the concern, and the other amplifies it to force action. Compassionate digital leadership does not need to frighten people into buying. It helps people make informed decisions. That distinction is especially important in an online world where exaggerated promises and manufactured urgency can become normal. Sometimes we think relationship building happens during the sale. Usually it happens long before. And trust grows through repeated experiences, like someone reads a useful article. Later they watch one of your videos. On another day, they receive an email that answers a question that they've been considering. Perhaps they download a helpful resource. And eventually they encounter an offer. By then, they are not meeting you for the first time. They have experienced your approach. They know whether you educate before promoting. They know whether you exaggerate. They know whether your content respects their time. And they have begun answering the question, can I trust this person? And that is why value first is not simply a content tactic, it is a relationship strategy. Compassionate digital communication becomes especially important when something goes wrong. A customer complains publicly. An order is delayed. A link does not work. Someone misunderstands your message. Your first instinct may be to defend yourself. So pause and read the message again. Ask, what is this person actually concerned about? Then acknowledge the experience before explaining the situation. I understand why that would be frustrating. Let me see what happened. Now, that one sentence can change the tone of an interaction. You have not admitted something that is not true. You have acknowledged the person's experience. And you have clarified the facts and offered an appropriate solution. And sometimes the most important marketing you ever do happens after something goes wrong. Now let's bring this back to our integrated e-learning journey. In business, empathy helps us create offers and communication around real customer needs rather than manufactured ones. So ask, how can we become more useful? At work, empathy improves digital communication among colleagues. Before sending the abrupt email, read it again. Before responding angrily to a message, wait. And before assuming someone's silence means disagreement, then ask. Digital efficiency should not come at the expense of human understanding. And in life, empathy asks us to carry our values into social media. We do not need to respond to every argument, nor do we need to win every online disagreement. And certainly we do not need to turn another person's mistake into public entertainment. Sometimes digital leadership means knowing when to post and when not to post. Now here's your practical challenge. Choose one piece of digital content that you plan to create this week. Before publishing it, apply 4 questions. What is my audience experiencing? What do they genuinely need? How does this content help? And what is the most respectful next step I can invite them to take? Then read the content one more. Remove unnecessary pressure, remove exaggerated claims, clarify anything confusing, make the value obvious, and make the invitation honest. You may find that the message becomes simpler. It may also become stronger. Now, the tools we use to communicate have changed enormously over the years. But the human needs underneath communication have not changed nearly as much. People still want to be respected, to have useful information, and they want honesty, and to know whether the person speaking to them understands something about their situation. Technology allows us to reach more people than ever before, and that gives us an opportunity. It also gives us a responsibility. The screen should never become an excuse to forget the person. Perhaps that is one of the simplest principles we can carry into digital leadership. Use technology to extend human connection and not replace it. Now here's our digital marketing secrets learning lens for this week. The most trustworthy digital message begins with understanding, provides value, and ends with an invitation and not pressure. Remember the framework. Listen, understand, help, invite. Listen to your community, understand what matters, help before promoting, and invite the next step. That is empathy-driven messaging in a nutshell. Across this episode, we have explored compassion not as a sentimental addition to digital marketing, but as a practical way of communicating. Remember, behind every metric is a person with a need. And behind every objection may be a legitimate concern. And every purchase becomes an act of trust. And behind every message we create is a choice. We can use communication primarily to push, or we can use communication to understand, educate, serve, and invite. That doesn't mean abandoning marketing. It means practicing marketing in a way that reflects our values. So this week, remember, people do not want to feel targeted. They want to feel understood. And when people genuinely feel understood, trust has room to grow. We began this week with our e-learning leadership companion, Empathy in Action, Real-World Business Applications. It gave us our central idea. Compassion notices, empathy understands, and leadership acts. Then the listening heart explored spiritual leadership and invited us to see differently, to notice people through compassionate eyes. Coaching talks brought empathy into performance leadership and challenged us to lead differently by combining human understanding with accountability. And here in Digital Marketing Secrets, we have explored how to communicate differently, creating messages grounded in understanding rather than pressure. See differently, lead differently, communicate differently. 3 perspectives, 1 integrated leadership journey. And throughout them all, we reinforced business, work, and life. Next week, our journey naturally widens from empathy toward understanding people whose experiences and cultures may be different from our own. Our digital marketing secrets will explore cross-cultural digital content, reaching the global community with sensitivity. Digital communication can cross borders in seconds, but a message that works beautifully in one community may be understood and misunderstood in another. Words, images, humor, assumptions, symbols, and even calls to action can carry different meanings across cultures. We will explore how digital leaders can communicate globally without losing sensitivity, authenticity, or respect. And perhaps this week has already given us the best place to begin. Listen before assuming, understand before communicating, and respect the person behind the screen. Until next time, keep learning, keep serving, and keep putting value first. Because good digital leadership is not simply about reaching more people. It's about reaching people more humanely. I'm Richard Fontanie signing off. I hope you can come back next week. Bye now.